Good afternoon and welcome to Saturday Sesh. My name is Trey Reckling. I'm the founder and director of Academy of Cannabis Science, and we're proud to be partnered with only accredited universities like Seattle Central College, UNLV, Highline College, and it's nice, like I mentioned before, it's nice to have smart friends, and we have several smart friends on the call today, particularly our special guest, Dr. Pejman Bady. Dr. Bady, welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good to see you. And we've never had an opportunity to meet in person, but we've had this meeting set up for quite a while. So thanks for agreeing to come on today. I'm really excited because, like I mentioned, one of our academic partners is right there in your neighborhood in Las Vegas. UNLV's been a proud supporter and partner with the Academy now for several years. And so it's important that our students get to know you and know what's going on in their neighborhood. So do you mind giving us just a little bit of introduction to you and how you're interfacing with the industry?
All right, I'll try to keep it short. It's long. I've been in the cannabis industry since inception in Nevada. I'm an emergency trauma doctor by training, and I've been to business school at USC Marshall. So I was in the process of managing a large size publicly traded healthcare company in Nevada and nationally. My mother got diagnosed with stage 4 ovarian cancer, and I was a guy that I led the medical group. I was the medical director for the group, so I was the guy that said we will never touch this stuff ever. I was that guy, and my brother's a physician, my dad's a physician, come from a family of physicians, and my mom went through chemo the first time, ended up in the hospital every single time, and then I started giving her cannabis, and I just saw it. I saw this lady who was just shriveling up and dying survive and be able to eat dinner at the dinner table and not end up in the hospital with every chemo. And I remember the moment that I decided to get into it is I was giving her illegal Jolly Ranchers back then. Mm-hmm. So it would help her pain. But one day I came home and she was laid out on the kitchen floor. I'm like, this is such a necessity, and the way we're doing it illegally and dosed improperly is not how it's done. And that's where I kind of turned. I was involved in the opiate issues for our state, and the local guys asked me to help them manage the cannabis stuff. So I told them, I believe in it. I'll do it. I'll write some of the laws for you guys, but I also will apply. So we applied. We have cultivation, large size cultivations, manufacturing here, and also dispensaries. We also have distribution. We also have pain management centers here locally with also regenerative centers. So we're very heavily involved in the education and the medical side of cannabis. We have webinars with our physicians every other month for anybody and everybody who wants to join, not just our customers. And we are about to get funded for a study to replace opiates with cannabis and the endocannabinoid system. So that's a little background about how I'm deeply involved in cannabis now in the state of Nevada.
Thank you. And I know from doing my research on you, there's so much more to share. You're also leading the physicians group out of the state. Is that correct?
Yes. There's a group of physicians that are involved with cannabis. My partner I lead. My partner is a pain management physician. I'm an emergency trauma guy, and we started this group. We have a group of physicians that are involved. And we are also doing a national and international project with several groups in Canada to educate the pharmacists and so forth. So it's expanding, but it's been a very slow and tedious process.
But thank you for putting in the time. And let me backtrack a little bit, because you talked about you haven't always been a true believer. You haven't always been somebody to turn to cannabis. What kind of messages did you grow up with around cannabis? Like what kind of things were you taught growing up?
Um, well, I'm Persian. I was born in Iran, and my father is a physician in Iran, and his father was like a lot of folk medicine, and they use a lot of alternative stuff. And so, but traditionally and historically, cannabis was taboo,
Mhm.
and you don't use it. It's a drug that we don't know about. And as a physician, and grew up in a physician family, you don't do drugs, you don't do any of that. So alcohol was okay, but it's just like, and you get into a trend of following what when you grow up with something, you try not to second guess too much. As you get in your teenagers, you second guess stuff, right? And but when you come to a ability to recognize and think and process how and why, then things started to shift for me. So I was taught no cannabis at all, and then you start thinking about it. I'm like, oh my God, this is the best thing that's ever happened to us. In fact, the name of our company is called NuVeda. After all this stuff, I kind of left before I started cannabis. I left the whole big medical industry of drugs and pushing drugs and so forth, and went into the Himalayas and up north and meditated for a while. Went down south to study ayurvedic medicine, which is plant-based medicine, and the sutras and the Vedas of that has been going on for 5,000 years. So the third and the fourth sutras of all the Hindu language and the Ayurvedic medicine is cannabis. So the name of our company, the umbrella company, is called NuVeda, like the new Vedas that are coming back, and cannabis and the prohibition and our ability to use cannabis. So it's got many layers to me personally. Cannabis does, and my mom and physicians and educating yourself in plant-based medicine. So it's just, I live it now, and I'm a big believer of it.
And that's beautiful. And as we know, the Vedas are some of the earliest written documentation of cannabis as medicine. And so it just makes so much sense, I'm glad that you're a true believer now, because you're obviously a pioneer in the space and teaching a lot of other physicians about this. What's your elevator speech when you run into another physician who is not as enlightened as you when it comes to this substance? Like, where do you start if you only have just a couple minutes to catch their attention?
If they know my background, and I was a leader in our group and company, so I get some automatic credibility with that if they know me. And then if that's the case, I just go straight into, I'm like, dude, you got to try this. What is wrong with you? What do you got to lose? It's better than getting people who got opiates and dying, right?
Absolutely.
Use it. If you have any questions, call me. So it's that language, that discussion. If they don't know me as well, then it's just like I tell them, like, look, I've been involved in this. I believe in it, and I think it's changed a lot of my patients' lives. And it's something that if you don't know much about, you need to educate yourself. Otherwise you're handicapped. That's my elevator speech.
No, that's beautiful. And thanks certainly for the work you've done in opioid reduction. Could you talk a little bit about that? Because that was your pre-cannabis life, right? Was opioid mitigation?
Yeah. Well, I was a medical director of a company, so we managed all stuff. But the number one, and it was a public company, and I hate to say this, but it's the truth. When shit hits the fan is when the shareholders' shares go down, and my big boss calls me up and said, "Look, we had 3 kids die from opiates. Go fix it." And it's not because, well, I mean, I'm sure some of it is because we lost some young humans, but it's more about the shareholders kind of a thing, right? So that's how I was involved in the opiate reduction, but it was opiate reduction with nothing to replace it, nothing to come and help well, what's the solution? You take the opiates away. I mean, it got to a point that the district attorney's office, the DA was a friend of mine, calls me up, Paige, people are getting on heroin because they can't find opiates. I'm like, dude, that's your problem, which was, I'm, if you can't tell by now, I'm very, very blunt, and I don't know how to sugarcoat stuff, but I'm embarrassed to say that was my response. That's your problem. Let people get on heroin, Now we're studying and coming up with, in fact, we have a tiered system of a high dose THC. We use a colloid called Vesisorb, which increases absorption. It's not a nanotechnology stuff. It's like real. We've been using it for years in the healthcare industry. So to increase the absorption of the cannabis, get to the receptors, both the upper and lower receptors, the brain, the B1, beta 1, beta 2 receptors, and really replace some of the patient's pain recovery needs on the receptor side without using the opiates, right? So I feel so blessed, honored, lucky, I don't know what you want to call it, to be part of this thing. And I think it's the future of our medicine,
Mm-hmm. No, and I agree.
Sorry if I'm going on a tangent when I answer your questions. It just like takes me there, but yeah.
I need some of that. Seriously. I'm not kidding. I'm actually dealing with some super severe pain issues right now. I have fibromyalgia, neuralgia, paresthetica, all kinds of nerve issues, sciatica, back stuff. And I can't deal with most opiates. The only one I can really deal with, even long-term, is tramadol. Anything above that, and I cannot deal. And I've been taking it long enough now that my body, cat, get down. Get down, kitty. My body's not absorbing it as it should be. So I'm not getting the pain relief. And now it's creating withdrawal within my body. And so it's a tumble. And now my doctor's wanting to send me to a special pain clinic. And she mentioned some drug, I can't remember. It's like butorphan or
bupropion.
Oh God, what was that?
Bupropion?
No. Oh fudge! I wish I could remember.
Buprenorphine?
That's all right.
Buprenorphine, something kind of like that.
So one thing you could do is myself and all of our docs in our group, we do this work pro bono for all cancer patients or patients that don't know how to manage their pain medications with cannabis. They don't know how much to change what. I'm assuming you are on some sort of a nerve medication like carbamidolol or
I take tramadol, I take tizanidine, I take gabapentin, I take ropinirole because I have super severe restless limb syndrome. I jerk all over. Plus, I have Tourette syndrome on top of it, which makes it coming back hardcore.
So I'll make my information available, and please call me offline. And then, so we do this pro bono to go over your current medication, what to take, what not to take. And I'm not going to throw out the name of our brands here.
Understood.
But I'll give our brand that has a Vesisorb would be something that might be useful to you. So hit me up after this or connect with us, and we'll take it offline.
Okay.
I think we're getting closer and closer to some solutions for the long-winded response to your question. Is I think we're getting closer to having some sort of opiate replacement and or in conjunction therapy to reduce the total MMEs, which is morphine mill equivalent requirements of our pain patients.
Right. I just have a bad thing about me. It's just, I'll take a medicine and then I just don't absorb it as much anymore. That just happens with most everything.
No, there's another set of studies that is a little bit more premature at this time. We're fully involved with it, but is bringing the genomics genomics evaluation. So kind of like 23andMe and that sort of thing. There's a company that has a more of a health focus. We're actually working with them to conduct all of the cannabis and the psilocybus genomics for them, that allows you to see genetically if you're having absorption issues, right? So and we mix that with another genomic testing to see what your natural enzymatic levels look like that might
Yeah,
not
being a
allow
redhead.
absorption.
Yeah, being a redhead, I've always had that weird thing with pain tolerances.
Yeah.
It kind of fluctuates. And you said psilocybus.
Yeah.
I remember when I was younger, I did have a friend with a mushroom garden, and that really did reduce my migraines when I did utilize that on a regular basis. He made capsules. We didn't necessarily fry ourselves, but
Yeah.
it was a really good general medicine.
Dr. Bady, if I could ask you, obviously the safety profile of cannabis is really good. You know, there's no true LD50 for cannabis, so there's not a concern about really overdosing. You can overdo it, but not necessarily overdose in the way we think of overdosing. But could you talk about, you mentioned the challenge of dosing, because like you said with your mom or somebody who's new, or just the fact that we all respond differently to cannabis. Could you talk about the challenge for you as a physician when interacting with patients and trying to guide them on dosing? Because I know that's still tricky because there's so many unknowns still in the products on the shelves.
Yeah, it is. It is tricky on its within itself, and it's even trickier when you're mixing it with other medications. That's why we offer this pro bono medication management for patients that are starting on cannabis or have been on cannabis, that sort of thing. So on its own, I want to give you, people in our industry, by the way, it's hard to be centered and balanced. A lot of people that love cannabis and in this cannabis industry, and it's kind of lopsided, and they want to talk about all the good stuff, right? And I talk about both. I try to be very neutral and be as scientific as possible. So and I'll get to the dosing in a second, but I want to make sure when you said the profiles, there's different kinds of profiles, right? The psychotropic profile of cannabis still exists, right? We're getting a lot of cannabis toxicity in the emergency rooms. We're getting a lot more than before, because the level of concentrated cannabis that people are consuming is so high, and we're getting so good at producing high quality stuff, right? Mm-hmm. So there's some post-cannabinoid psychosis that is coming in, that's right. But the addiction profile is so low, which is really what we really want to focus on. And it all becomes one big giant decision to make the risk to benefit ratio for the patients, right? So as a whole, if I got 1,000 patients and somebody overdoes it and a couple of them end up in a hospital emergency room with, acute psychosis or whatever, to me, it's absolutely worth it to have some sort of medication on board, cannabis medication on board, that the addiction profile is minimal. If there is any addiction profile, it's a psychotropic addiction profile. It is not a physical addiction profile. So I take that all day long, right? So having said that, I think the dosing of cannabis is very, very important, and depends on why you're taking the cannabis for. If it's really for medication use, I think we're dosing it so well now. I mean, we in our companies, we use high-end labs, and we use 2 or 3 labs to make sure we're getting the right amounts. So on our ingestible oral stuff, we're just right there. We are in our cultivation, we produce all kinds of strains that have 50 CBD THC, or we are doing 31.8 percentile THC week after week after week. I run our cultivation like a hospital. Everybody's in white scrubs. So we're getting these really accurate outcomes and results. So dosing wise, patients know exactly what they're taking, ingesting orally or inhaling or that sort of thing. So once now I think we're in a position that we know the right dosages that are available. Then we got to be able to match that to our bodies. So some people, when they ingest, they go through the bypass effect of the GI bypass effect. So it takes them 45 minutes before they even feel any psychotropic changes with the cannabis. But the idea is always go slow, always give yourself time, wait for 2 hours if you're ingesting it. You know, if you're changing from one form to another, for example, if you're used to smoking concentrates or smoking flower, and then now you want to smoke concentrates, right? And then you're just sitting there and just, you know, hitting it, and it's a higher percent dosage. So whenever my biggest advice is, if you move from one type of cannabis to another, take your time, give it some time, don't overdo it, and see how you do. And then the next day or the day after, or whatever, you'll get more familiar. Your body does have some tolerance. So I have medical patients that are taking 300-400 milligrams a day, even more. And I'll tell you, if I took 10 milligrams a day, I'll knock myself out here. I'll tell you a quick funny story. We're coming up on one of our medications that we're producing. We're using the Vesasorb, which increases absorption by 5-fold. And then we because of the fact that we didn't want to use THC, so we don't have to go through the regulated testing to get the taste right. We use Delta 8. So they gave me the Delta 8 to taste it, and I'm like, look, you know, I'm at work. You know, I'm not going to feel anything. Oh, absolutely not. No, don't worry about it. I took 2 of these 5 milligrams with Vesasorb, which is like 25 or 30 milligrams of Delta 8. And I was so high in the middle of the day for 2 hours, I couldn't function. You know, I wasn't seeing patients. I was on our cannabis side. But so whenever you're trying something new, I think you need to understand what you're taking and understand the amounts and dosing of it.
For sure. And you know, it's so exciting because you're in this in a way that a lot of physicians, well, first of all, a lot of physicians are not doing what you're doing, but you're also, as you mentioned, running licenses in cultivation, in processing, in retail. And that's super exciting. I've heard you speak about, you mentioned a one-to-one ratio. Could you talk about, and I know it's early and we still have so much more to learn regarding human research. Could you talk a little bit about one-to-one and glioblasts and the results that we're seeing, at least in laboratory mice?
Oh my God. Is that, did you hear one of my talks?
I did.
It is okay. You put your finger right. I think the most exciting part of my research to date. So again, we've been at it since, you know, time flies, like 8-9 years now. And there's a Spanish study that's come out on glioblastoma. So there's a lot of anecdotal stuff that's going on, right? There's a lot of it. You know, we're doing a bunch of studies on our own as well. But but it's really, really amazing when you get proper studies that are out. And in Spain, about now 5 years ago, they came out a study with glioblastoma, which is an extremely aggressive brain tumor. And these mice were given, I talk about this all the time, but I want to remember accurately that was it a full separate entourage effect, meaning that separated THC with CBD, or was it one molecule? I don't remember exactly, but at the end of the day, it had both of them, and it showed that the glioblastoma tumor cells in mice, in a significant number, more than 30-35% of the affected mice had a reduction and some complete degradation of the tumor. It is the most, and people don't talk about it. I don't know how this has been so quiet. I mean, look, I come from a publicly traded healthcare company world, and I ran a portion of it, right? So I do regenerative medicine, which is stem cells. You know, I'm really involved in all this kind of stuff. But like the U.S. will not approve, the insurance companies won't approve regenerative medicine, stem cells, right? Because if they wanted to pay for all the patients that are not willing to undergo a scalpel in their spine because they're afraid, and they will say, yes, I'm going to get stem cells if I know nobody's going to cut on me. That's billions and billions and billions of dollars that's going to be out of the insurance company's pockets. And hence, if somebody comes up with a treatment of glioblastoma, you know, is not something that looks favorably by a lot of people. I'm not a big fan of the FDA. I'm not a big fan of the insurance companies. I'm not a big fan of any of those guys. In fact, I've had issues because I'm so vocal about it. But at the end of the day, you know, my old boss asked me to stop talking about cannabis when I was in the public world. And I said, look, I took a Hippocratic oath to do what's best for my patients, and I truly believe this is the best for my patients. So if you don't want me, get rid of me, right? And 5 years later, I gave a lecture to all that company that had asked me to stop doing this. So it was all these amazing revelations, but the study is not being spoken about because they don't want to talk about it, but it's the most amazing study that is out there that is using for. So I have patients, I have people that are calling me from all over the world and asking me, hey, is it true about this glioblastoma thing? My son, my 10-year-old kid has, you know, what are you going to do? What should I do? I'm like, give your 10-year-old son THC. I don't care if they get high, give him CBD. And I'm not much higher CBD levels, but I want the entourage effect on these patients, and just do it. It's better than getting a knife in your son's brain, you know? So anyhow, so it's a great study. It's amazing.
And thanks for sharing.
I'm very excited about it. Sorry about that.
No apologies at all. And anybody who might not be familiar, that I'm pretty sure that's what killed John McCain. And y'all remember he was a high profile case, but I kept hoping somebody was going to nudge him and say, look, you need to, you know, it's not going to hurt you to try this. I don't know that he had that benefit, but you know, and with regard to you getting pushback from fellow physicians, thanks for continuing to fight the fight and not be silenced. You know, the tall trees catch the most wind, as they say. So thanks for weathering the wind on that one. I want to turn to Jennifer's question, which is basically, could you talk about, or do you see that diagnosis can have a downside when a person is labeled with a condition, especially when traditional Western medical practice commonly applies a big pharma answer? And what are you seeing? And are you seeing a push from natural medicine to help open the doorway or challenge that thought?
Let me read this. I really don't. I'm trying to understand the question, but hold on one second. I labeled. I don't know what labeled. What the definition labeled with what kind of.
Jennifer, do you mean once somebody is kind of tagged and say they have this condition? Well, this is our automatic response for treatment, sort of thing, and kind of getting stuck in just a root of what has been done in the past?
You're saying yes. Yeah. So I think it's very important who the clinician is and who you go to and what are the algorithms. So the answer is yes and no. Yes, in the fact that when we ran, big companies and we write the protocols for other physicians to follow, the other physicians will follow. But all physicians have a leeway. And when in a room with a patient, even though you've been labeled with X, Y, and Z, and you have to follow a particular protocol, right? Glioblastoma, we got to radiate you, we got to see what happens, and blah 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 blah. I'm not thinking that Western medicine should be out. In fact, I think Western medicine is very important. But I also think, my ideal world of medicine would be Eastern medicine, medicine, Western medicine, and shaman medicine. Medicines from our ancestors that our bodies know well. And your mind, there's a lot in your mind. So my ideal therapy for someone who's got some sort of a label or disease or whatever is just not, here's a Western medicine. The way I approach it would be, go do the medicine. Yeah, it works. We have a lot of studies about which chemicals work on you. Not that they're good for you, they're going to kill a bunch of other cells, but at least we know we're going to do the basics that us as humans and our evolution of physician world has come up with till today. But I would use cannabis, I would change their diet, I would send them to spiritual training, mind training, controlling their mind. And that's so Western medicine is just one of many, but you have to find the right physicians that are willing to do that. A lot of us physicians don't have time. Like, I don't have time to get in a room with a patient for an hour. I don't. And I have my own companies. Most doctors are in the scrutiny to be in and out of the room with 15 minutes and do the best they can do for the patients. And our world of independent physicians are going away, and it's becoming big size pharmaceutical managed stuff, right? So, if you find those kind of clinicians that are able to spend an hour with you and go through this series and get you to point A to point B, those guys are very, very expensive, because they have to make a living spending the time with a patient for an hour instead of 5 patients, right? And I'm just being really realistic about the reality of it. But if you can't find somebody like that and that can get over that label, is I think that's the right direction to go. I hope I answered your question.
As we've heard, a friend of ours said, if you go to a doctor and the doctor is not willing or doesn't understand that there is an endocannabinoid system, you might want to reevaluate who you're going to, right? Because, would you go to a doctor who says, I don't know anything about the pulmonary system, I didn't get that in med school, and just leaves it at that? There's a whole working system in your body that physician doesn't understand or is not availing themselves at least of what the information is currently available. So if you find yourself going to a physician who won't talk to you about cannabis, there are other options, as Dr. Bady continues to say. So you didn't want to talk about your brand a minute ago, but I'm going to ask you, especially for those who'll be watching this who live in Nevada, how might going to the sanctuary or one of your retail outlets, how might a patient's experience be different going there, since it's your company, since you have this focus on healthcare and wellness?
The first thing is that we have lectures. Exactly what you're doing right now, we have it with our providers, doctors, that we're open to all of. You don't have to come to the sanctuary. You can go, I don't care where you go to. We do this because we're believers in it, and I think us, if we look, I learn from the bud tenders all the time, what the patients want, what the questions are. So I learn from them more than they learn from us, right? But I have certain knowledge base, and somebody else has another set of knowledge base that I don't know about, right? So I believe that as all of us share our knowledge, the industry will rise up as a whole, right? So you don't have to be one of our customers, but most of our customers know that we have lecture series, we have Q&As, and they can ask. Also, they know that it's a physician-run company. So if they have issues, we see those people for free, right? They can call us and say, I need X, Y, and Z. Can you manage my medications for us? And I do that because of my mom. You know, my mom lived 7.5 years when she should have died in 9 months, and that's because of cannabis, right? If I could if I give this much of that to somebody else, I'm happy, you know. So that's the difference. Also we carry some of our own brands that have the Vestasorb, has a high affinity and absorption rates, and most dispensaries are not medically inclined because financially you lose money, right? But we are and then we offset that because we do a lot of rec business as well, right? But so those are the differences that I think you'll find at the sanctuary, and the people know we have, and if you ever go to the sanctuary or look us up, we have our core values, and we talk about our core values and our vision and our mission. And our team lives by those core values. We have let people go at our company that we love and they're great, but they can't live by our core values and they don't belong. And that translates to our customers and our patients. So, by the way, it's my company, I'm biased. Everybody thinks that their baby is the most beautiful baby in the world. But at least on my end, I try to do the best that I can to what I just told you. So that's it.
No, and thank you for that, because we know some people are just slinging weed, and if that's all you want, you can go buy that. But we want to encourage people, you know, especially people who might not even think of themselves as patients. Think about why you're using cannabis. It may be that you're using it for more medicinal intent than you're aware, right? Whether it's to relax, reduce stress, to sleep. All these are medical considerations. So sometimes people also need to reevaluate why they take cannabis and just be a little bit more self-aware. But we're blessed to have people like you doing what you're doing and having that kind of focus. Certainly.
Thank you. But you're right. Look, in emergency medicine, you have no idea. Like when I get in a room, and I mean I've done it for so long. When patients walk down the hall, go into a room, I'm like, I can see the psychiatric problem, and I don't know what kind of disease they have, but I can tell you half of it is psychological, just like Jennifer said, right. You know, and no different in our. I look at our dispensaries as clinics. I look at this, for me, it's just like I call them patients. You know, 50% of the people that I think they're recreational, they're not. It's a psychological thing going on. In fact, we've been really trying hard. You know, the industry is so nascent that the regulators are trying to figure out what to do with this massive industry. They don't know. I mean, at the beginning was a disaster, still is, you know, but they have a compliance board that is coming in and trying to regulate things, and they don't know. And it's not their fault. It's just so new. They don't know which way to go, right? So we have to jump through so many hurdles because they come up with something new every single day. So it's been difficult, but we are aggressively trying to separate it out, our dispensaries, to have medical dispensaries and recreational dispensary. And on the medical side, because of the fact that we have larger dosage in us, I mean, you know, when you look at our dispensary, when you walk in and you look at our, it's a really cool looking place. You know, it's really cool. But the medical side of it, we really treat it as like, you know, our medical dispensaries are going to be like doctor's offices. You're going to go in, there's no hoopla, there's no flash. You come in there, I want to know what the diagnosis is. They're going to have a protocol. It's just ran like a clinic, you know, and it's been, so it's been a little difficult trying to separate these two out because the local government hasn't been able to wrap their head around how we separate these things properly and so forth. And by the way, they're doing a really good job. They're doing the best. But hopefully soon we'll be able to provide all of our not pain patients, all of our medical cannabis patients through our medical dispensaries, and all of the patients that we're using for the pain study, which is a double-blind cohort study, to go to these dispensaries and get their medicine to replace their opiates. That's what our focus is.
Thank you so much. And you know, a lot of times we see in newly legal or recently legal markets that the medical patients just get left behind, even though we wouldn't have retail or adult use cannabis without all this history of medical. And so thanks for keeping the focus there, because you know, a lot of patients like myself feel left behind when legal comes on board, because it's this whole circus environment sometimes, and it's just different. They're different needs. And so thanks for keeping the focus here. I do want to ask, I know James and Jennifer have had an opportunity to ask a question. Anybody else want to make sure to ask a question? Not forcing your hand, but just want to make sure we're giving space. James, Jennifer, you got any more? I just don't want to dominate the time.
I sent you my contact information, Doc.
Yep, I got it.
Cool. Just want to make sure.
And after this call, if you don't mind, Dr. Bady, I would love to get I'd love to get both your contact information and information about those
Beautiful.
the lectures that you all do, because we'd love to let our students know about that.
Yeah, go on our website, go on our the Sanctuary and the Sanctuary NV website, and then there's a place that has all of our dates of our lectures and webinars, and then it'll show you. You just link it in, and you know, ask questions, and we're very, very open with people that want to get on and have something to offer that we don't know as clinicians and as physicians, right? So we don't know it all. We're learning so much. So if you're a bartender, if you guys have school and classes, I have a question for you.
Yes.
Can you talk and question and maybe an invite to one of our webinars and lectures, because I don't know what you guys are doing with UNLV. I had no idea. It's the first time I'm hearing about this. So I want to learn what you guys are doing. What are you guys doing?
Yeah, well, we've been teaching here in Washington State. We were the first approved by the Department of Health here to train medical marijuana consultants. So stores that want to be considered medically endorsed have to have people who are certified by the state. So we teach a 20-hour course that it's very intensive, and it's currently the highest level of recognized expertise in the retail space in the country as far as level of preparedness. And so from that, we had interest from UNLV. We teach an introductory course called the Cannabis Professional to help people prepare to work in the retail space. We teach cannabis and pets, and we're teaching a Spanish language version of Cannabis Professional. But we were just contacted by the VP of Instruction or a member of his team who wants to explore what other kind of offerings we can offer in Las Vegas or in Nevada. So I would love to talk to you about what we're doing, because there's certainly, they've certainly been strong academic partners. We would love to involve you somehow.
Okay, yeah. So just on the UNLV side, what are you guys doing?
Well, that's what I was mentioning. We teach a handful of classes there, and so the initial interest was preparing people to work in the retail space. So that's what since there hasn't been, or at least initially there wasn't a requirement or a certain level of education required, we wanted to help set that standard so that people aren't just walking off the street like you see in some retail dispensaries where they walk in with not a whole lot of knowledge and they're serving the public and answering really important questions.
Yeah, let's connect offline and then we can discuss further.
Thanks for hanging in
It's the
there.
rain. Yeah.
Hey, but Dr. Bady, we're so glad to have you on today. Thanks for spending time with us. we will post this on our YouTube channel. And if you don't mind, Dr. Bady, hanging back just for a couple minutes, I would love to touch base with you and make sure make sure we make a couple contacts. And I know we have each other's email, but I just want to share a couple of people that we know. I want to make sure that you know as well.
Yes.
No worries.
And students, thanks for being here today. We appreciate you. Don't forget, you can find all of our course offerings on academyofcannabisscience.com, and always check our YouTube channel where we've got hours and hours and hours of great lectures like this that you can avail yourself of. And those are all free. So thank you for being here today, and have a great Saturday.